Okay, so Andrew, consider the following case. So say that there's this amazing sock stand that I find on the side of the road in Ithaca that sells really great socks at super low prices, lower than anywhere else in town. And I'm really enjoying clothing my feet with these fantastic socks from this sock stand. But I learn from the Ithaca Journal, publishes an article that says that the workers that are producing the socks sold at this sock stand are 16 years old, some of them even younger than that. They're working 16 hours a day. They're working 3-month-long contracts and not getting paid until the very end. Their passports are confiscated. They're working in dangerous conditions in a damp and dark basement. Okay, this is troubling. How should I respond to this fact that I've learned about the treatment of these workers? Well, it seems pretty clear to me that what I should do is stop buying the socks from the sock stand. I should not support these people. Now, if you agree with me on that, then I think that you should agree with me that I should stop supporting the food industry equivalent of the sock stand, what you could call sweatshop farms, which are a lot of farms that we've seen through the LA Times article where the workers are just not treated well.
Okay, by way of response, the first thing I want to point out is that my own socks are completely sustainable and fair trade. In fact, they're free because my aunt in Germany knitted them for me. They may not match my outfit, but there's no concern about justice here with respect to my socks. That point aside, however, with respect to the food issue, I think it's important to notice two things. First, even if you know that the food you're getting is from what you're calling a sweatshop farm, it's going to be very hard to avoid it. I mean, it's really hard to find. Maybe on some menus you'll be able to see where it's indicated, but at convenience stores, at delis, at diners, at restaurants, at supermarkets, and even sometimes at farmers markets where you have mendacious farmers taking things from the supermarket and then selling them at farmers markets, happens more often than we think apparently. It's really hard to avoid sweatshop farm food. Second point is that the way in which you would avoid sweatshop farm food is going to be incredibly demanding. It would require, suppose, your food's coming from California, it's going to require you to fly to California and check out the conditions of the workers there, or it's going to require you even locally to go to a bunch of different farms and check out how the animals and how the workers are treated, or it's going to require you to trust a bunch of people which may or may not be worthy of your trust.
Yeah, two things in response. So first, I would say, even if this obligation to avoid food from sweatshop farms is very demanding, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not under that kind of obligation. It could just be that the right moral theory implies that I have very demanding obligations. So I don't think that that's a problem. And also, even if it were the case that it were impossible for me to avoid buying food from sweatshop farms, I think that I'm still obligated to do something. I can maybe buy food from local farms where I can talk to the farmers about how their workers are treated. That would improve the conditions of the workers on average that I'm buying food from.
So my sense is that this is an admirable impulse, that a lot of us share it, but again, the worry is that it's extremely demanding even to do just these small things that you're mentioning. I mean, it seems like if for everything that you buy, you have a positive obligation to seek out some information regarding how it was generated and sourced and delivered and so forth, that you're not going to be doing much else with your life. You're not going to be doing philosophy, for instance.
Again, I think that even if this is very demanding, then it's still the case that I have to do something. It's not like I can just go through life without giving a second thought to the treatment of the workers at these farms that are producing the food that I'm eating. I think that I'm obligated to do my bit to improve their lives.
All right, well, let me take a sip of my fair trade coffee and think about that for a second. You're suggesting that you're obligated to try to change something, to make a difference, even if it's something small. What would you make of the fact, or say in response to the claim, which seems to be an empirical truth, that a lot of these systems, coffee for instance, socks, food in general, a lot of these systems are enormous in scale and scope. They're opaque, very difficult to figure out what's going on in a lot of these. The industry doesn't always want you to know, obviously. And if basically insensitive to small changes in demand. So the fact that you do or don't buy something at that stand on the side of the road or at that supermarket is very unlikely to have any effect on any animal, any person, any worker at all. And so really there may not be consequences that are the effect of your decision at all.
Yeah, so the key word there is consequences, of course, and I think that the problem with that argument is that it presupposes that consequences are the only thing that matter morally. And I think that's a mistake. So the right moral theory, I think, has got to allow that sometimes we're under an obligation to do something for symbolic reasons, even if the consequences are not improving things. So I think that I'm obligated to avoid buying food from sweatshop farms for symbolic reasons, even if the system is as insensitive to my decisions as you say it is.
I guess I'm a little more inclined to think that we can be opportunistic, and that in a case where we think there's no clear consequences here, nobody's going to notice and no policy is going to be affected, that we could go ahead and eat or buy in the knowledge that there are no real effects to our act. But another worry about your kind of symbolic claim is that if you're always trying to avoid these deep systemic injustices and evils that we find ourselves enveloped in contemporary modern life, you're going to have a kind of misguided purity about you that will make you a sort of difficult person to be around. Always avoiding and neglecting and abstaining from everything just in the fear that somehow you'll be involved, that your hands will get dirtied by some sort of process that has negative aspects. So I think our discussion here shows some of the dilemmas involved in the food ethics discourse as well as other ethical discourses. We want to fight for justice and stand for something that actually is good over and against injustice and systems that are kind of deeply misguided or even evil or wrong. But it's very difficult to know how to do that and not become kind of falsely puritanical, unbearable to the people around us, or quixotically kind of tilting at windmills that don't really make a difference.